Welcome to AI, Government and the Future, a podcast by Corner Alliance. We explore the intersection of artificial intelligence, government and the future with your host, Alan Pentz. We work with government to create results. We ignite your agency's mission by helping you to design and implement high-impact and innovative federal programs in AI, broadband, cybersecurity, public safety, and more. Being a government ally is at the core of all we do. Introducing your host, Alan Pentz.
Hey, welcome to the podcast. Today, we are very privileged to have a friend of the pod, Jeff Berkowitz, who is a fellow DCer with me, who is got a company called Delve, and he is in the middle of the AI revolution in policy. So we're going to go deep on that today. I think it's going to be really cool. So welcome to the pod, Jeff. Great to have you here.
Yeah, excited to be here and chat with you.
Okay, so Jeff, you guys just published the revolution will not be computerized, a report on AI. So why don't you take us through like what brought you to that, and well, you can give us like 30 seconds on Delve, and then kind of get into that report.
Sure. So why should you listen to me? Delve is a competitive intelligence and risk advisory firm specifically built to understand political and reputational issues that companies and industries have to navigate to be able to operate successfully in the stakeholder economy that we live in today, where more people are scrutinizing how they operate and the externalities they bring, as well as a more activist government that's even more intertwined with industry than ever before.
Activist government? What? I haven't heard of this. No, I'm kidding. Okay, and so tell us how did AI in this report come up?
Yeah, so when generative AI came around, really kind of brought us to that inflection point where folks in both policymaking circles and the public were really starting to become much more aware of how far machine learning and deep had become deep learning and had really become this new thing that was really ready for prime time in a lot of ways. All of a sudden, everyone in a lot of it, in policymaking, really looked at the fact that this is this new innovative technology, and in past innovative inflection points, the advent of the internet, the advent of mobile and social media, government has really taken a step back and let the technology mature before thinking about regulation. And the perception from a lot of people and policymakers, as well as other stakeholders, is that meant that was the wrong approach. And we're now fighting that last war with AI, where folks really want to bring regulatory frameworks, safety and security frameworks to bear right away. And while that can be a good thing to make sure that your folks are acting responsibly, it also comes with a lot of challenges for innovators. So we launched middle last year delveinto.ai, where we're tracking the policy and stakeholder conversations for folks across all the key jurisdictions: Washington, state capitals, Brussels, London, and beyond.
Interesting. Yeah, we've talked to a lot of Europeans on the pod, and my take is the EU AI law, to paraphrase a Labour MP, is the longest suicide note ever written in history. So I don't know what your take is on the current regulatory environment, but it does feel like, we're seeing like a lot in Europe, uncertainty in the United States, and we even got some feedback like India is pretty hands off, like they're letting it develop as well. But what are you guys saying?
Yeah, Singapore as well is really taking more of that traditional approach to technology innovations. But it's interesting you compare the AI Act to a suicide note. I think some of the participants in that suicide have yet to sign. One of the 5 key trends, you mentioned our report that we just put out, which is really looking at what are the 5 key trends that we're watching on AI policy in 2024. I believe number 2 or 3 is easier said than done.
I stumbled over that expression too.
I pushed back on the team. They really believed in it, so I let them go with it. I think it works on the page. This is the first time I've tried to use it in an interview, but it really is. The EU likes to pass laws and regulations, and then realize that there are terrible ideas in there and fix it. But you're seeing several member states push back because as you just saw the head of antitrust and competition for the Europeans say yesterday, they don't want the AI model choices to be American model or American model. They want to have European models as well. And there's some great companies like Mistral and Aleph that are there. And so you're seeing France, Germany, other folks push back on some of the ways the AI Act was written. Germany just said they'll sign on after getting some concessions. That's one of the things we're going to keep watching. But even once the AI Act is officially signed, that just starts a clock on implementation and regulation. And as you know from all your government work, there's legislation and then there's implementation. And I think there's a 6, 12, 18, 24 month window for a bunch of the different pieces of the puzzle. I think this is the passage of the AI Act will be the end of the beginning, not the beginning of the end.
Right. So why did you name the report "The Revolution Will Not Be Computerized"?
Well, we like to have fun names for our reports so people will open the email. But I also, if you recall the original sort of song, with the line, "The revolution will not be televised." The whole point was that we were at that time, the country, America, the world was entering this age of television, and that's where people got their news and information. And the argument, the contention was, there's a lot happening that you're not seeing on your television screen. And I think that's true with this AI revolution. The robots aren't alive, right? This is pattern recognition at scale. It doesn't actually have reasoning capabilities, and to a large extent, so I think a lot of the concerns about the existential risks, may be premature, and that what's really going to decide how this technology matures is how humans interact with it and how humans interact with each other in applying it in different industries, putting in the right policy frameworks and regulatory frameworks. And I do give credit to Senator Schumer and the folks in the Senate last year. They did listening sessions. They were in listening mode, rather than legislating mode. And it was a great degree of humility in how they kind of approached, let's understand this and hear from a whole bunch of different stakeholders across the board with different views and get smart before we do it. It's the only issue I've ever dealt with congressional staff on where they are actually asking you to set up meetings with clients and talk to them about what they're doing, what they're working on. Usually it's the opposite. The lobbyists are begging the congressional staff to listen to their clients.
And so in the report, I think the first issue you guys really identified was like 2024 is going to be the year that the regulatory onslaught begins, right? So people, like you mentioned, 9 Senate AI listening sessions, bunch of hearings, UK summit, EU did a bunch of stuff. So you think this is the year the rubber hits the road?
So we were particularly calling it the year of agency action. I think that's important, an important distinction.
Not as opposed to legislative. Right?
Yeah, because I think, especially at the federal level, you're going to have a whole bunch of bills introduced and conversations start right there. Congress is going to try and shift from listening into legislating mode. But this is an election year with a very closely divided and polarized Congress and there are very, very few legislative vehicles for anything, let alone complex things like tech legislation, which has a history of not making it past the mark. So I think what you're really going to see is the Biden administration, you had the executive order in the fall. There are 150 different things that at least 23 federal agencies have to do, most of them in 2024, to address that executive order. And so you're going to see a lot of agencies, Federal Trade Commission, Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, Commerce, and you're going to see a whole bunch of different agencies taking a lot of actions. And what we're really watching for is what agency that nobody was expecting to jumps into the fray and do any of these agency actions get aggressive enough that it really disrupts the emerging business models in the AI space.
So number 2, I thought was very intriguing. So you said that states won't wait for the Moses of Milford. So explain that to us.
And I'm trying to make that phrase happen. So James Moroney is a state senator from Connecticut, and happens to have in his district a town called Milford. So I jumped at the alliteration. But he is really Moses in a lot of ways. He was a real leader in a lot of the state level privacy legislation. As you know, unlike the EU, we do not have a federal data privacy standard in the United States. Many states, California, Virginia, Connecticut, Washington, have sort of adopted their own frameworks, and many work together. And they're all many of them are variations on the same theme, many of which borrow heavily from the EU framework put in sort of a Brussels effect. But now, Senator Moroney has organized over 100 legislators from 30 states. Many of them are chamber leaders or heads of the committees of jurisdiction for technology issues, to build some sort of a framework or shared understanding of how to approach AI regulation and legislation. And so at some point they're gonna come down the mountain from their conversations with some sort of a framework. You're seeing a lot of states introduce legislation of different aspects of AI, but that could be a massive game changer if they have a real framework that a bunch of states are comfortable passing some variation of.
I know you guys didn't write about this in the report. I'm just curious your opinion. Look, we had like the internet, we had personal computers, and I've seen articles about all these doomer books about personal computers back in the late 70s, early 80s. And I've just never seen an issue go this hot, and the regulation as a result come on so fast. What is AI just categorically different, or is it just the environment we live in where trends trend faster and bigger, that this is all coming to a head? We're literally just over a year over generative AI being in the public consciousness. So what's your take on that?
I think a lot of it has to do with the environment. Some of it is that baseline environment of just things move faster, and there's many more, in this digital age, more stakeholders can engage more effectively, more quickly than ever before. But specific to AI, as I talked about a little bit, many policymakers and legislators feel that they whiffed it in letting social media and some of these other earlier technologies go unregulated and unscrutinized for as long as they did. And the public largely agrees with them, and they don't want to get it wrong this time. In the past, when they erred on the side of innovation and let 1,000 companies bloom, that you're seeing them take a much more hands-on approach to what they think the regulatory environment should be for responsible AI. The other key difference, I would say, is just the scale of what's required for this technology. A lot of it, you have folks like the FTC, CFPB, European authorities seeing a handful of already very large companies be the main players in this space. And so, and which has also led to the other side of the speed equation, to what you observed, which is we've never seen the folks developing a new technology seek regulatory walled gardens as quickly as we've seen happen. Very quickly after OpenAI came on the scene, Sam Altman is telling Congress he thinks there should be federal licenses for AI models and all these other things. And that sounds great when you're the first to market and you want to lock in that position. There's thousands of models on Hugging Face. There's all these open source models. And you've seen this tension in the EU AI Act, where it's more important for regulation to protect consumers and the public, or is it more important that you ensure you aren't just locking in a few large companies as the only ones that can operate in the space?
Yeah, I do think that's the nature of this being sort of in a lot of ways, a sustaining innovation on top of the cloud, where you get these big behemoths that want to get regulatory capture going as soon as possible. And it's interesting with the EU. It feels like they're like, oh, we can make money off of this instead of just extracting rents from U.S. companies. So now we don't want to regulate it quite as much, right? So it's an interesting dynamic. And another point to that is tech is certainly not united on this, right? So you guys said the family feud goes public in tech. And clearly you have these large groups, large companies who have some interest. You have Mark Andreessen out, kind of wanting to get to prevent the regulatory capture, and, the startup, he's backing the startup economy. So there's a lot of different players here. And so tech's not going to be speaking with one voice, right?
Yeah, well, we already mentioned one of the tension points of what closed models versus open source, and what gets you the most secure and responsible AI. I think you also have the existentialists who are afraid of the risk of the computers taking over and us ending up in the Terminator world. And they're kind of looking past that and saying we need a UN agency like the IAEA. Now, of course, having done a lot of foreign policy, national security work in my background, I was like, if you're really worried about this, I don't know if the IAEA has actually done a great job of stopping proliferation, but
yeah, like I look at the Nuclear Regulatory Commission and I'm like, oh, it's the way to keep nuclear energy from being used in the United States, not So I do think that's what I scares the crap out of me, these like very early attempts to regulate. So hopefully the feud kind of keeps enough disruption in the system that they can't come to one approach.
And I think that you're going to see some of those larger incumbent players versus newer startups. You're going to see open source versus closed source. You're going to see a lot of these tension points around where the liability, that's going to be another piece. The CEO of Mistral said that the liability and responsibility for how things get used really should be on who's deploying it. It's like, well, but it's your model. Right. So you're going to have those tension points over that. You're going to have tension points over copyright and training data. There's a lot of different tension points. Tech's not going to be have a united front on this.
Yeah, I do sense this very, in some ways you can compare it to nuclear danger, because really the most advanced models that are the most dangerous are going to be controlled by the largest companies, which are going to be the ones we're able to influence and control the most. So I feel like that threat is pretty low. I mean, the existential threat to me is pretty low on the hierarchy because of that reason. But I get the sense that we are going to regulate to some extent, probably hurts the innovation a lot. But there's just going to be these things escaping under the bottom, these small, very, like, they can run on mobile models, like Lambda and its weightings and all that is already out and it's already being iterated and forked. And so it feels like to me it's at the edges where there won't be any regulation, but that's probably the least dangerous place.
Maybe, but maybe not. Not a crazy amount of RAM. Like the computing demands and of some of these open source models is coming down, and as it does, you can have a lot of asynchronous strengths kind of come around. And so I'm less worried about like what's going to happen. What's going to happen with the open AI models, or Google's Gemini, than I am like what's somebody going to do with something they pulled off Hugging Face and kept in sort of jailbroke from any of the things. So I think that's the case against the open source. Now there's a lot of ways that open source is more secure and responsible, and you aren't relying on one company to maintain it. The question is, what are the real risks that we should be worried about versus what are policymakers concerned about? Right now, the most frequent topic of AI-related legislation that passes is election disinformation, because politicians care about themselves first. And then second is think about the children. You're seeing a lot on child safety and protecting them. Now you're going to have the Swifties are going to become a pack. And push for legislation to prevent, deep fake exploitation, which was already a topic that a number of states have either tackled or are tackling. Those really the biggest risks out there versus some of the more existential things that could be done, with models by rogue hackers or computers.
I also have like a big fear of job protection and rent seeking. That's where I see most of the regulation going right now, and just preventing the disruption. which I think would be a terrible tragedy for humanity and the benefits we could get. But back to your point, like I take the point that these models can run on, less and less power, be more and more powerful. But my take is the solution to AI is more AI. And the more powerful models can be directed to detect and contain those other models. And they're just going to have more GPUs and more engineering talent behind them. So I think the chances that they're able to contain most of the bad effects of the other, open source, jailbroken models is pretty high, is my take. And, that's a supposition and, we'll see what happens. But the most powerful stuff will be controlled and regulated. So on the last part of your report, I thought it was really interesting that you thought transparency will be the hidden cudgel. So explain that to us.
Yeah, I think you have a lot of stakeholders that are pushing for as much transparency in how the models work and how the companies operate and what data went into it and everything. And we've seen this with any number of industries on the ESG front, climate front, other fronts. First they ask for your data, then they ask you to listen to their demands. And what you're going to see is even if companies aren't forthcoming or with enough disclosure, you're going to see folks sort of going in there and trying to red team or otherwise sort of pull apart the pieces to figure out what's beneath it to raise questions and further their agenda, whether it's the folks who are concerned about the impact on labor, or the folks that are concerned about safety and responsibilities, misinformation and disinformation online. There's a lot of ways to sort of take that data and then use it to make demands. And that includes, I think, policymakers where they aren't able to move legislation quickly enough. You'll see agencies pushing for more voluntary commitments. And the more information they can get out of companies to understand where it is, the more they can then turn around and exert pressure on those companies to try and make demands and sort of regulation by press release.
So moving on from the report, let's talk a little bit. So how is Delve, and I understand you got some other ventures going, involved in this, and what kind of, so I assume you're tracking this at Delve and talk about some of those business initiatives.
Obviously we have Delve into .ai, which is sort of our forward-facing tracking of the policy and stakeholder conversation, but we're also really excited about what the technology can do for our work with public affairs and government relations professionals and the broader need for companies to stay ahead of the risks and challenges that they face in the political, policy, regulatory environment, but also in the reputational environment. And so I've been doing this kind of research for a long time, and I've had lots of people show me platforms they told me were going to blow me away, and I look at them and say, my intern kicks this thing's butt, right? It's just because what we do is very nuanced, it's very qualitative, it's a very sort of niche type of topic. The kinds of dots that have to be connected, you need that human reasoning and expertise in political acumen. And when Gen AI came along, I didn't say, oh my God, this thing blows away what our research team can do. But I did say, I can teach this to be just as good as what our analysts do. We have a very rigorous training program that we put our team members through to learn how to analyze, pull in all the right data, analyze it. And there's a huge amount that AI can do to help with that. And we're already seeing with some of the things we're doing, it double or triple, the productivity of analysts. So we're really excited about some of it.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. So for right now, you're using it mostly to enable current analysts to do their job at a higher level and spread their efforts over more things.
I think we are a number of years, I don't know what the number is, but we're a number of years away from any meaningful AI technology that doesn't have human in the loop. So we're really viewing it, to borrow Microsoft's term, we view it as a co-pilot. And our goal over the last six to 9 months has been, how do we give every single one of our analysts a super AI supercharged co-pilot for their work? So for example, we've we're in the process of building out a platform. Just like our analyst team, our model for monitoring is very different than a lot of platforms that are out there, because we're pulling in not just what's in news, what's in social media, what's in legislative and regulatory action, court action, all these disparate data types. Most platforms they do your social listening, and then you've got the news, and then you've got that, and then you've just got these fire hoses at you. And we've then filtered that through our analyst team in the past. But now, not only can the AI agents help with web scraping and pulling in data streams, and then normalizing it and categorizing and sorting it, but we're even seeing really promising, the reasoning side, where it's helping sort of rank, not only is this relevant and important, but is this, how important is it? And doing so on something more than just a keyword basis, right? The platforms of the pre-Gen AI day and age give it a bunch of keywords, and it spits out things that match those keywords. And maybe it gets really smart and it knows that sea is a synonym for ocean. But that's about the level of sophistication. AI takes it to a whole different level. And so we're really excited for what that's doing to help compress the amount of time it takes our analysts to do their jobs, while maintaining that level of rigor and systematic analysis that we promise our clients.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the human in the loop, right? So if you can get 80, I think it probably eats up, it's going from 60 to 70% of the work to 80 to 90. And it'll be a long time to get that last 10 or 5 or 10%, right? And then I actually think by that time, we might think about work in a different way when we're in that last 5%. My take is that there'll be thousands of companies that you've never even thought of that will exist at that point because of the capabilities of AI. It will be almost seamless, and there will be job displacement, certainly. Like, you're not going to end up hiring as many analysts over the next, 5 years as you grow. Each analyst will be a lot more productive and probably get paid more as a result, right?
Don't tell them about the paid part. No.
I won't. We'll edit that part out.
But to that point though, yeah, we're going to hire less analysts, but we already have, and most businesses today have, a problem of there are not that many quality people to hire. This is the pain point of every business person you talk to. In this unemployment environment, and looking at the demographics, there's not a workforce coming forward. And to be frank, the higher education system is failing not only the people who are in it paying tons of money, but it's failing those of us who need to find that workforce of the future. I think is replacing the jobs we can't fill versus jobs that people have.
Right, and I look at it like over time. Actually, immediately, I think companies like you and we're doing some stuff too. If you can simultaneously cut your prices to your customers and pay your people more and make more profit, you're going to crush all your competitors. And that's what AI can allow you to do over time. And then I think the other thing that it does, like back to the company thing, is, think about all the different applications that you've wanted to develop over the years, but had no coding ability and didn't want to go deal with some offshore team and managing all that. And you don't know what you're getting yourself into. And I think within a year or two, you're going to be able to tell the AI to spin up applications, and they become easy to create, disposable, and you can build businesses off of them in seconds. And that's just going to enable so many more types of needs to get met. And as Milton Friedman said, that human desires are infinite, right? So we will always want more stuff, and now we can get more of it. So I see it as it's just going to be a huge positive, and people are going to end up making more money, being much more productive, and doing jobs they like a lot more, even with some displacement in between. Cool. Well, Jeff, thank you so much for today. If people are interested in learning more, so you cited the AI platform that you got. Is that public, or is that something you?
No, that's internal right now. It's under development. It'll go into a closed beta soon. The policy tracking, they can, that's live. Anybody can go sign up. There's a free version and then a premium version. That's right at delveinto.ai. Okay,
that's great. And then if they want to reach out in general, it's what's the best way for people to get in contact with you?
Our main website is delvedc.com, and there's a contact form on there. It comes right to our team.
Awesome. Well, this has been great, Jeff. Thanks. I'm really excited about what you guys are doing and to hear more about how you're seeing AI change the business and the policy landscape. So appreciate you being on the pod today.
Thanks for having me on. Always good to chat with you.
AI, Government and the Future is brought to you by Corner Alliance. To find out more about Corner Alliance and how we work with government to create results, visit our website at corneralliance.com. And then make sure to search for AI Government Future in Apple Podcasts, Spotify and Google Podcasts, or anywhere else podcasts are found. And click subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. On behalf of the team here at Corner Alliance, thanks for listening.